Pokemon has been in the headlines a lot recently due to the astronomical success of Pokemon Go, but while we continue to read headlines about hundreds of people gathering in parks in the middle of the night, people getting robbed, and a good helping of car accidents, something has been forgotten by many. It is Pokemon's 20th anniversary. That's right, 20 years ago, the first Pokemon game was launched in Japan on the original Game Boy, marking the beginning of a craze that continues to this day. Pokemon Go was part of that celebration, but so is another game that hasn't been released yet. It is the 7th generation in the main line of Pokemon games, known as Sun and Moon. From everything we've seen so far, it's everything we've come to love about the games. Same solid premise with a few gameplay tweaks. Or at least, what I used to love. Which is what this video is all about. Because the fact of the matter is, Pokemon is 20 years old, at least 85 games in, and now boasts 700 plus Pokemon you have to catch. And yet, what has really changed? I know the saying is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and Pokemon continues to sell very well indeed. But I think it is time for more than just cosmetic changes. It is time for the game to take the next step as an RPG. It is time for the familiar formula to evolve and become more. Eventually the craze to catch them all will die down, and something else needs to be there to keep people invested in the game. These are my opinions on what is wrong with Pokemon and how it needs to change. Now, a bit of a disclaimer, most of my changes will be based upon a single premise. Instead of having two different copies of games with the only real difference being slightly different Pokemon, Game Freak needs to take the Fire Emblem Fates concept and make one of the games the classic version that is still easy to get into and play, and make one for experienced players. That way you can still appeal to kids and purists with one version, but finally give longtime Pokemon fans the game they've been waiting for a long time with the other. So, with that distinction made, the changes I now propose would mostly just affect this hypothetical, harder version. First, you need to make the world bigger. While Pokemon is still a 20 to 38 hour game if you do minimal grinding, once your Pokemon have reached level 50, the game is pretty much over. What am I supposed to do after that? There is no reason to attain the mythic status of a level 100 Pokemon. While battle mansions and other things have been added to make the aftergame more appealing, there is still little incentive to keep leveling your Pokemon since it is mostly grinding. Make the world bigger. It makes the story longer and gets us closer to that ever-elusive 100 level mark. I understand space constraints, but technology is becoming better and better. And also, it's not just about the levels. Having a bigger world is pretty sweet. Just look at today's RPGs and remember the awesomeness that was Silver, Gold, and Crystal? 2 regions to explore in one game? Our minds were blown in just the second generation of Pokemon games, and yet Game Freak has never tried anything similar to what they did in the second gen almost 20 years ago. I know the next change is going to be unpopular, but I believe Pokemon needs to play down the IV-EV training. I understand why this is here. You want to keep people playing your game, and you want to reward people for their hard work to have the best possible Pokemon by following the formulas you have put in place. But if you try to battle online and you don't IV-EV train, you have no chance of winning in battles. People love the strategic aspect of Pokemon, and by making success so dependent on IV-EV training as opposed to actual strategy of the battle, you end up turning Pokemon into a mind-numbing grind fest for stats and perfect Pokemon, as opposed to the technical aspects of battling. This is why Smogon is so popular. I don't have the time or the patience to pour hundreds of hours into getting the perfect Pokemon. I just want to match wits with another person in a strategic battle with the Pokemon I caught and raised. Speaking of Pokemon, now I know there are going to be some new Pokemon in Sun and Moon, but we already have 700 plus Pokemon. Do we really need more, especially when most of them are uncatchable in a given game? That's also another bonus of a bigger game. More places to find Pokemon and more Pokemon to catch. While the Pokemon Bank is a great idea, Game Freak just needs to break down and make a game not named Pokemon Go that gives every player the chance to catch most, if not all, of the Pokemon. Also, stop with the 10 new legendaries every generation. They cease becoming legendary if there are so many of them. Legendaries should be special. I especially shouldn't just be given one, as has been the case in some Pokemon games, and they need to be rare, an extreme emphasis on rare and hard to obtain. Which brings me to my next point. Game Freak needs to clean up their mythos and lore. There have been so many Pokemon that created so many different parts of the world and people and other Pokemon and stuff. It is so crisscrossed. People have to come up with absurd multiverse theories to make sense of it all. Which, even though Pokemon games have alluded to multiple universes, even that can't be true because the people in the games continually mention the other regions. Which is another thing. Stop making new regions. We know there are other regions. Do you know how awesome it would be if we could go to all or most of those regions in a single game? Game Freak, you have so many great Pokemon, regions, and ideas. Just stop trying to reinvent the wheel, take all the awesome ideas you already have, polish them up, and put them in one game. A few other tricks that would be awesome would be to make HMs inherent moves that don't need to be learned and take up a move slot. I shouldn't have to waste a slot in my Pokemon party because I need to cut a tree or move a boulder, nor should I have to negate the strategy I've built my team around just so I don't have to run back and forth to a Poke Center. You see, that Pokemon with the blade appendages? I think it can cut through things just fine. You see that Pokemon that lives in water? I'm pretty sure I don't have to teach it to swim or dive through water. HMs are an archaic game device that has far outlived its usefulness. To continue keeping it around is just plain dumb. Now we are getting to the last two things Pokemon needs to change, and these are the big ones. First is make the game harder. Almost everyone who has played the main series of games knows that the game is way too easy. At times it becomes mind-numbingly easy. I understand that Pokemon is meant to be an introduction to the RPG genre, and that is awesome. So keep that ease of use for the easy version. But for those of us who know the battle system well enough to know which types are super effective to other types, we'll breeze through the game. The solution to this is to give actually intelligent AI to the characters we are battling. I can't tell you how many times I've had a status problem inflicted upon me, say like sleep powder, and then the AI uses that same move on me. Dude, my Pokemon's already asleep. Do you have a brain? Dumb stuff like this shouldn't be happening. Make the AI act a little more like an actual human, and let this realism and toughness start right from the beginning. Force us to learn good strategies in order for us to progress through the game. And just as an aside, make gym leaders tough, like really tough. They're built up so much in their regions, and yet if you have just the right type advantages, they're a cakewalk. One thing to fix this is to make the gym leaders always adjust to what level your best Pokemon is, so you can't grind your way to victory. And give them 6 Pokemon? Come on, make it a challenge. But an even better fix would to give gym leaders actual strategies that would combat the inherent weaknesses of their Pokemon. These are supposed to be the best and brightest trainers in the world, and they can't devise a strategy to shore up their type weaknesses. Gym leaders as they stand right now are almost as laughable as any other trainer. It's time to truly make them stand out. Make them kick our butts a little. Make them let us go, oh dear, I may have to rethink my strategy. And finally, and most importantly, is give us an actual story. Sure, catching and battling Pokemon is fun, but I can play Pokemon Go or Smogon for that. Sure, I like battling gym leaders and becoming champion, but what kind of story is that? I want to be the very best. Okay, cool for you, but why do I care about being champion just so I can say I'm the best? That's not very interesting. Besides becoming champion, I get to battle an evil organization and catch legendaries, but that just adds a modicum of flavor to a bland story. Basically, what I am asking Game Freak is to make me emotionally invest in the characters. Stop making everything about the battling and the collecting. Make me care about the people in this world. Okay, I am taking the gym challenge, but please give me another reason for doing it than just becoming champion. That is an extremely shallow and boring reason. I don't want the premise of the story to essentially be just because. Also, make the protagonist a little older. Honestly, a 10-year-old doing all the dangerous things they do in the games is just a tad ridiculous. Plus, it would allow us to explore some more mature themes that could really go after the moral dilemmas Game Freak has shown us some flashes of before in previous games. Anyways, I think I've gone on long enough and everything's starting to feel a little ranty, which is not my point. I just want to see the full potential of a Pokemon game, and I honestly feel that because of the lack of difficulty and story, we have only experienced a glimmer of what Pokemon could be. Regardless, tell me what you think of my suggestions. Am I on the right track? Do you have some other suggestions? Is everything perfectly alright as it is with the games? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. And if you're feeling generous, I would really appreciate a like or a subscribe. But no matter what you do, I want to thank you for watching. This is the Outcast Writer signing off, and remember, what we create matters.